The harsh truth is this: most people speak in a way that betrays them. Their words burn away their credibility. Their tone tears holes in their authority. And their endless explanations drown out the very respect they're desperate to earn. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I think I feel maybe," and noticed how small it made you sound? Have you ever left a room realizing no one truly heard you, even though you spoke the most? The Stoics warned us that careless speech is a mirror of a careless mind. Today, we're going to break open this uncomfortable truth: why the way you speak keeps you invisible, and how to claim the power that only a few ever master. If this speaks to you, subscribe, not for me, but for yourself. Let it be your vow to sharpen your words, discipline your mind, and rise into a version of yourself the world cannot ignore. This isn't just a channel. It's a path toward strength, wisdom, and unshakable self-mastery. Most people don't realize how much of their presence is communicated before a single word is spoken. They step into a room as if they are intruding, apologizing with their body language, shrinking in their posture, and softening their tone in a way that says, "I'm here, but I don't want to disturb anyone." This timid approach is the very reason their words are ignored. Because if you don't look like you believe in yourself, why should anyone else? The elite, however, move differently. They walk into a room with an inner conviction that they belong there, not arrogance, not noise, but quiet certainty. They know their perspective has value, and that value is felt long before their mouths open. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you constantly dye your mind with thoughts of being lesser, unworthy, or overlooked, your words will come out painted in the same shade. But if your inner belief is strong, if you've trained yourself to see that you carry something worth saying, then your speech will naturally echo that truth. This mindset of presence isn't about faking confidence. It's about aligning your inner world with the role you want to play in the outer world. Seneca once warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." How often do you enter conversations already defeated by the imagined judgment of others? You shrink not because the room requires it, but because your own mind has convinced you that you don't deserve to take up space. The few who stand out, the ones who speak like the top 1%, have disciplined themselves to resist that inner shrinking. They remind themselves that their thoughts matter, that their voice belongs, and that silence born of fear serves no one. Carl Jung observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this is where presence begins. If you're trying to copy someone else's tone or mimic someone else's authority, people can sense the disguise. But when your words rise from a place of authenticity, when you are not pretending but truly standing in who you are, then others instinctively pay attention. Think of someone you admire, someone whose words seem to settle the air when they speak. Is it because they shout the loudest or dominate every conversation? Rarely. More often, it's because they embody a calm assurance, an unspoken confidence that their voice carries weight. This is the art of presence, subtle but unmistakable. The Stoics trained themselves daily to master this quality, not by demanding respect but by cultivating inner steadiness. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And the truth is, if your mind is mastered, your words will follow. If your inner world is chaotic and doubtful, your speech will reflect that. But if you've learned to steady your thoughts, if you've taught yourself to approach life with composure, then when you open your mouth, others will hear the sound of a grounded soul. This is why the elite don't rush to prove themselves. They don't enter a room scrambling for attention, talking just to fill silence, or bending their words to please the crowd. They understand that power is not in chasing approval but in carrying clarity. Silence does not scare them because silence is part of their presence. When they speak, it is because they have something to say, not because they fear being forgotten. This restraint is what gives their words strength. Just as still water reflects clearly, a steady mind produces speech that is sharp, deliberate, and unclouded. So much of communication is not technique but energy. It's the way your thoughts color your posture, the way your convictions shape your tone, the way your self-image leaks into every phrase. If you enter every exchange thinking, "I must make myself small, I must be liked, I must not offend," your language will betray you. But if you step in with the thought, "I have value to offer, I am here for a reason, I will speak with clarity," then your words will naturally reflect authority. The Stoics practiced this by focusing only on what was within their control: their judgments, their choices, their character. And that is the foundation of presence. To speak like the 1%, you don't begin with clever phrases or tricks of rhetoric. You begin with the discipline of thought. You begin by training your mind to believe in the worth of your own perspective, by letting go of the habit of self-denigration, and by entering every room with the understanding that you are not there to beg for a voice but to contribute something meaningful. This mindset doesn't guarantee applause, but it guarantees respect. And in the end, respect is the true currency of powerful communication. Most people don't realize how much power they give away with the words they choose. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. You're in a meeting, a conversation, or even just speaking to a friend, and instead of stating your point with clarity, you wrap it in soft padding. I think this might be a good idea. I feel like maybe we should try it this way. It's just my opinion, but possibly this could work. Every added word of hesitation drains strength from your voice. What could have been a clear statement of vision turns into something that sounds like uncertainty, and people pick up on that instantly. Authority isn't only about what you know, it's about how confidently you deliver it. The elite understand this, which is why their language is stripped of unnecessary qualifiers. They speak in a way that communicates trust in their own judgment. And when you trust your words, others will too. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And yet in communication, the way you speak often reveals what you will do. If you lace your words with doubt, it shows that your inner conviction hasn't taken root. If you state your thought firmly, it shows you're prepared to stand behind it. People respond not just to the content of your message but to the energy of certainty or the lack of it. Weak language signals hesitation, and hesitation tells others that you are not ready to lead. It doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the room. If you sound uncertain, your voice will not carry far. Think about how often you've dismissed someone's suggestion, not because their idea was wrong, but because the way they said it made it seem unworthy of attention. Human beings are wired to look for signs of confidence as a marker of credibility. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. The habit of softening your words is the opposite of excellence. It's a routine of self-sabotage. By repeating it, you train others to see you as unsure, even when you aren't. By contrast, the habit of speaking with clarity becomes a practice of discipline, one that reshapes not just how others see you but how you see yourself. It's not about arrogance. This is where many people misunderstand. Speaking with certainty doesn't mean you always have the right answer. It means you value your perspective enough to express it cleanly, without apology. Seneca reminded us, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, but because we do not dare that they are difficult." When you hesitate to state your truth directly, you make communication harder than it needs to be. You complicate the exchange with nervous fillers when all that was needed was a steady voice and a simple sentence. Consider how different it feels to hear someone say, "Maybe we should consider doing this project differently," versus, "This project will move faster if we change our approach." The second statement is not only clearer, it sets direction. It tells people where to move. The first invites doubt, hesitation, and debate. The difference isn't in the idea itself, but in the confidence behind it. The elite know that in moments of decision, certainty, even imperfect certainty, creates momentum. And momentum is often more valuable than perfection. Language also has a way of shaping our own psychology. If you constantly tell yourself, "I think I can," instead of "I will," you are conditioning your mind to believe that your confidence is conditional, fragile, dependent on the approval of others. But when you cut away the softness and state your intentions directly, you begin to rewire your self-image. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This begins with words. If you tell yourself you are uncertain, you will act uncertain. If you tell yourself you are clear, you will act with clarity. Your speech is not just communication, it's training for your identity. There's also another trap hidden inside weak language, the desire to be liked. Many people use soft words not because they lack ideas, but because they fear judgment. They want to avoid coming across as too direct, too firm, too certain, as though confidence itself might offend someone. But the truth is, people respect those who stand firmly in their words. They may not always agree, but they will listen. And in the long run, respect is far more valuable than approval. Approval fades. Respect endures. When you speak with strength, you risk temporary disagreement, but you gain lasting credibility. So how do you escape this trap? Start by noticing the words you reach for in your daily conversations. Catch yourself when you say, "I think," or "I feel like." Ask yourself if the sentence would still make sense without them. In most cases, it does, and it sounds better. Practice replacing "maybe we could" with "we should," and "possibly this will work" with "this will work." At first, it may feel uncomfortable, as though you are stepping out too boldly. But over time, you will see how differently people respond. You'll notice that your words travel further and your presence grows heavier without you raising your volume at all. The Stoics trained themselves to speak with intention, not with noise. They didn't waste words because they saw speech as a reflection of character. To them, every sentence was an opportunity to express discipline, clarity, and reason. If you want to communicate like the few who truly influence the world, you must begin by stripping away the words that weaken you. What remains is stronger, not because it is louder, but because it is clean, direct, and confident. Weak language is the invisible chain that keeps people stuck in the crowd. Break that chain, and your voice begins to rise. In a society where most people hide behind apologies and qualifiers, certainty itself becomes rare and therefore powerful. To speak like the elite is to speak as though your words deserve to stand on their own. And once you do, they will. When you think back to the moments that made you lose credibility, they often weren't about what you said but about how you said it. Words that could have carried weight ended up sounding weak, not because the thought behind them was wrong, but because emotion took over and clouded the delivery. When your voice rises out of frustration, when your tone shakes from anger or defensiveness, or when your words pour out like a flood without order, people stop listening to your message and start reacting to your state. High emotion makes you sound reactive, not reliable. And in a world where trust is everything, sounding unreliable is one of the fastest ways to lose respect. The Stoics knew this well. They trained themselves daily to remain composed, to never give external circumstances the power to dictate their response. Epictetus reminded his students, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If your reactions are ruled by chaos, your words cannot carry authority. Think of communication like a mirror. When you speak, people are not just hearing your words, they are reading the state of your mind reflected in them. If your mind is unsettled, anxious, or inflamed with emotion, the reflection is distorted. Your words may be true, but they come wrapped in a package that makes others doubt their validity. On the other hand, when your inner world is calm, your communication is steady, and people instinctively trust it. Carl Jung once observed, "The pendulum of the mind oscillates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong." In other words, when emotion takes over, even intelligent thoughts can swing into nonsense. Without balance, your speech becomes less about clarity and more about catharsis. And that shift costs you influence. Leaders who rise above this trap are not devoid of feeling. They experience anger, frustration, and passion like anyone else. The difference is that they refuse to let those emotions spill unchecked into their speech. Imagine a blade of grass in the wind. It bends, it moves, but it never breaks. Leaders who master their emotions are like that, flexible yet unshakable. They don't resist the wind, but they don't snap under its force either. And when they speak, their calmness under pressure creates an aura of strength. People trust their words, not because they are the loudest in the room, but because they are the steadiest. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Adversity is where emotion rises the fastest. A heated argument, a public rejection, or an unexpected challenge can tempt you into reacting impulsively. But it is also the very stage where you can prove your composure. Each time you choose measured words instead of emotional outbursts, you build credibility. Each time you hold your ground with calm reason instead of shouting to be heard, you show strength. Reliability is not built in moments of comfort. It is forged when emotion could have taken control but didn't. Consider how differently people respond when faced with two leaders in crisis. One raises their voice, blames others, and lets frustration drive every word. The other lowers their tone, asks questions, and calmly identifies the path forward. Who inspires confidence? Who do you want to follow? The choice is obvious. Words spoken from logic, clarity, and self-control carry weight because they are rare. Most people are pulled like puppets by their feelings. So when you meet someone who isn't, you instinctively respect them. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion completely. The Stoics didn't deny that humans feel deeply. They simply refused to be enslaved by those feelings. Marcus Aurelius advised himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When you understand this, you no longer let every irritation or burst of anger dictate your speech. Instead, you filter emotion through reason. You let passion fuel clarity rather than distort it. In doing so, you protect your words from becoming weapons turned against yourself. There is also a practical power in measured speech. Calm words cut through noise in a way that fiery outbursts never do. Think of the last time someone shouted at you. Did you feel persuaded, or did you feel defensive? Now think of the last time someone disagreed with you, calmly pointing out flaws in your reasoning with steady conviction. The latter is much harder to dismiss. Anger provokes resistance, but logic delivered calmly invites reflection. The strongest voices are not those that shout the loudest, but those that remain unshaken when others lose control. Plato once said, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." Conquering your speech under pressure is exactly that. It is a victory over the self, the part of you that wants to lash out, prove a point, or discharge frustration in the moment. Every time you hold that impulse back and choose reason, you strengthen your ability to lead, to influence, and to be trusted. Over time, this discipline becomes part of your presence. People begin to expect steadiness from you, and that expectation deepens their respect. So much of speaking like the elite comes down to this simple truth. If your words are calm, measured, and steady, you project strength without ever needing to raise your voice. In a world where noise is constant, where emotions run unchecked, and where people react more than they reflect, the rare individual who speaks with composure will always stand out. It is not just what you say, but the way you carry the storm inside you that determines whether your voice is remembered or forgotten. And the one who controls their emotions doesn't just master speech, they master themselves. Authority is often misunderstood. Many assume it's about being the loudest voice in the room, the one who dominates every conversation, interrupting others until everyone is forced to listen. But true authority isn't about volume. It isn't about force. It's about presence, intention, and clarity. It's the difference between someone who talks just to fill silence and someone who speaks in a way that makes others stop and take notice. When your words carry weight, people lean in. When they lack it, people drift away. Every conversation is a stage where you either reinforce or diminish your authority. The elite know this better than anyone. They never wander into discussions without a sense of purpose. They know why they are there, what they want to achieve, and how to shape their words so they land with precision. Think about how authority feels in action. It's not an endless stream of words or a speech overloaded with details. It's the sharp strike of a few deliberate sentences that cut through the noise. The Stoics understood this principle. Seneca once wrote, "If you wish to be loved, love." His point was simple. If you want influence, live in a way that embodies it. The same is true of authority in speech. If you want your words to matter, they must be spoken as though they already do. That means no rambling, no trailing off, no apologizing before making your point. The moment you second-guess or over-explain, the weight of your words begins to evaporate. Authority is not just in what you promise but in how you deliver. If your tone shows conviction, if your choice of words shows clarity, people feel your seriousness before they even analyze your point. Authority is the lived expression of certainty. It's when your inner belief is so steady that your outer words come out like steel, direct, firm, and grounded. The elite don't need to shout because their tone already carries that steel. Another mark of authority is respect for time, yours and others. Leaders don't waste words because they don't waste minutes. They recognize that every exchange has a cost, and so they sharpen their speech like a blade. Think of a blade. It doesn't try to cover everything. It slices exactly where it needs to. Authority is like that. A precise word said at the right moment has far more influence than 10 minutes of scattered explanations. But authority isn't just about efficiency. It's also about direction. When you walk into a room without clarity of purpose, you leave yourself at the mercy of other people's agendas. You end up reacting, adding empty comments, or drifting into tangents. The elite avoid this because they prepare their minds before they speak. They ask themselves, what is the outcome I want from this conversation? That question shapes the way they communicate. If the outcome is clarity, they speak to clarify. If the outcome is decision, they speak to decide. This is why their words land with impact. They are guided by intention. Without intention, authority cannot exist. If you want others to trust your words, you must first discipline the thoughts behind them. Authority grows in the soil of self-mastery. A person who cannot direct their own mind cannot expect others to take direction from them. This is why people who are constantly scattered, anxious, or unsure struggle to project authority. Their inner chaos leaks through their speech, making every sentence sound unsteady. But the person who has mastered their mind speaks with an undertone of calm certainty that others can feel. There's also something magnetic about someone who speaks less but means more. When a person with true authority speaks, silence follows their words, not because they demanded it, but because people instinctively sense that something valuable has been said. Contrast this with someone who dominates the air with endless commentary. Eventually, people tune out. The weight of authority lies not in how much you say, but in how deeply your words are felt. And the fewer, more deliberate words you use, the deeper the impact becomes. Jung observed that people project their own uncertainties onto others. If you appear unsure, those listening will project doubt onto your words. If you appear clear, they project trust. Authority then is not only about what you carry inside, but about what you communicate externally. Your body language, your tone, your posture. All of these frame your words before they're even spoken. Authority shows up when you sit tall, look directly, and speak directly. When you appear steady, people assume your words are steady, too. In the end, the weight of authority isn't found in noise, it's found in clarity. It isn't in force, but in composure. It's in the way you cut through a conversation with precision, leaving behind something memorable and useful instead of scattered echoes. To speak like the elite is to treat every word as though it matters, because it does. Every sentence is an imprint, every phrase a chance to deepen respect or weaken it. Authority is earned not by demanding attention, but by embodying such clarity and self-mastery that attention is given freely. And once you understand this, you'll never again waste words because you'll know the true weight they carry. Most people believe that to sound powerful, they must always have the answers ready at hand, as if authority comes from never being caught uncertain. But the truth is very different. Real authority, the kind that commands respect in any room, is not built on pretending to know everything. It is built on knowing how to direct attention, sharpen focus, and guide the minds of others toward clarity. This is why the elite don't waste energy trying to impress with endless answers. Instead, they use questions like tools, cutting through confusion and creating space for insight. Carl Jung once said, "To ask the right question is already half the solution of a problem." That principle is what separates leaders from followers. A powerful question not only reveals hidden truths, but also positions you as the person who sees beyond the surface. Think about how often people default to shallow questions that add nothing to the conversation. How's it going? Or, is everything fine? These are polite but empty, producing equally empty responses. Compare that to asking, what's the biggest obstacle you're facing right now? Suddenly, the exchange shifts. You've gone from skimming the surface to diving straight into the heart of the matter. That single question signals not only that you are paying attention, but also that you care about uncovering what truly matters. And in that moment, without demanding it, you begin to shape the direction of the dialogue. People instinctively lean toward those who bring clarity because clarity feels like leadership. The art of asking better questions is rooted in the Stoic discipline of perception. Marcus Aurelius often wrote in his meditations about looking at things as they truly are, stripping away distraction and pretense. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Strategic questions help people revoke the false stories they tell themselves and face the real issue underneath. Instead of accepting the surface-level answer, you invite others to see more clearly. And in doing so, you establish yourself as the one who can lead them toward resolution. Authority built on questions is more sustainable than authority built on answers. Why? Because answers can be challenged, but the right question cannot be ignored. A bold statement may provoke resistance, but a well-placed question forces reflection. Even if someone doesn't respond out loud, the question lingers in their mind, quietly working its way through their thoughts. The elite understand this psychological power. They don't just throw out questions at random. They design them carefully, shaping conversations the way an artist shapes clay. Each question bends the discussion closer to truth, to decision, to progress. People often exaggerate problems in their minds, letting fear distort their perspective. By asking, "What evidence do you have for that?" or "What data supports this?" you help strip away the fog of emotion and bring the person back to logic. In that moment, you're not only guiding the conversation, you're also grounding it in reality. And grounding others is one of the surest signs of authority. What makes this practice even more powerful is that it doesn't demand you to be the smartest person in the room. It demands that you listen, that you observe, and that you know how to strike at the heart of an issue with precision. Plato said, "A wise man speaks because he has something to say. A fool because he has to say something." Asking strong questions protects you from the trap of speaking just to fill silence. Instead of cluttering a discussion with more words, you open space for others to reveal truths they hadn't even considered. In doing so, you become the person who changes the trajectory of the room without needing to dominate it. Strategic questioning is also a way of building trust. When you ask the right questions, people feel seen. They recognize that you are not brushing past them with rehearsed responses but actually trying to understand the core of their struggle or their perspective. This earns you something more valuable than attention. It earns you respect. And once respect is given, influence naturally follows. The best leaders know that people follow not because they are told to, but because they believe the leader sees something they don't. Questions are the bridge to that belief. This skill doesn't appear overnight. It requires practice. It requires resisting the urge to rush in with your opinion and instead pausing to frame the right question. It demands that you think not only about what needs to be solved but also about how the other person will process it. Aristotle once said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." Great questions invite thoughts without forcing conclusions, leaving room for reflection and discussion. That is how genuine dialogue grows. And genuine dialogue is where authority thrives. So the next time you're in a meeting, a negotiation, or even a personal conversation, remember this truth. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to carry the burden of always having the perfect answer. What you need is the ability to guide others toward clarity with well-placed questions. The moment you do, you transform from someone trying to prove themselves into someone others naturally look to for direction. This is how the elite use words, not to show off their knowledge, but to reveal what others didn't even know they needed to see. And once you master this, you'll find that people begin to follow your lead, not because you forced them to, but because your questions illuminated the path forward. Most people don't realize how quickly their words lose value when they refuse to stop talking. They believe that by adding more detail, repeating themselves, or softening their message, they will sound more convincing. In truth, the opposite happens. The more you circle around the point, the weaker it becomes. Confidence in speech doesn't come from flooding the air with words. It comes from knowing when to stop. A single statement delivered with clarity and restraint often carries more weight than a long explanation. Just like a plane must eventually land, your words must reach a conclusion. If you keep circling, the listener grows restless, and the impact of your message evaporates. The discipline of restraint is what separates ordinary communicators from the few whose voices carry true authority. Restraint doesn't mean coldness or distance. It means valuing the strength of silence as much as the strength of speech. Silence gives space for words to breathe. It gives the listener time to reflect, to absorb, and to consider. Seneca once wrote, "It is quality rather than quantity that matters." This applies not only to life but directly to communication. People who lack confidence bury their thoughts under endless layers of justification. People who are sure of themselves trust that a few clear words are enough, and others instinctively respect that. When you say something once, firmly and without excess, you give your words gravity. Carl Jung believed that in all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. The same principle applies to how we speak. Rambling is a kind of verbal chaos. It suggests that your thoughts are scattered, that you are still searching for order. But when you speak with restraint, cutting away the noise, you reveal the hidden structure of your thought. People begin to feel that you are someone who has already done the work of clarity within yourself. That impression creates trust, and trust is the foundation of influence. The discipline of restraint, then, is not about holding back truth, but about delivering it with precision and calm control. Think of the last time you listened to someone who would not stop repeating themselves. They circled the same point again and again, perhaps changing the words but never adding new meaning. At first, you may have listened carefully, but soon fatigue set in. The message lost its edge, and their credibility with it. Contrast that with someone who spoke once, directly, then allowed silence to carry the weight of their words. Which one stayed with you? Which one sounded more certain? This is why the great leaders and thinkers throughout history chose words carefully and delivered them sparingly. Authority is never in excess. It's in precision. Aristotle once said, "The more you know, the more you realize you don't know." The wise understand that their role is not to overwhelm others with everything they could possibly say, but to focus on what truly matters in the moment. Too many words often reveal insecurity, a hidden need to be validated, or a fear of being misunderstood. But clarity doesn't require validation. It requires courage, the courage to stand by your statement without adding a cushion. The courage to trust that the meaning is strong enough without constant repetition. The discipline of restraint is at its core the courage to let your words stand alone. There's also a rhythm to effective communication that restraint protects. Imagine a musician who never allows for pauses between notes. The melody would collapse under the weight of constant sound. It's the spaces between the notes that give music its shape and meaning. The same is true in speech. Too much explanation, too much justification, strips your message of rhythm. The best communicators, like skilled musicians, know when to pause, when to let silence hold the moment, and when to end the performance before it drags on. By respecting that rhythm, they create communication that feels sharp, intentional, and powerful. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In communication, waste no more words proving that your point is valid. Simply speak it as though it is. When you do, you signal to others that you trust your own judgment. And when people sense that, they begin to trust you. Restraint creates a natural air of authority. Not because you are withholding truth, but because you show discipline in how you deliver it. The fewer words you use, the more valuable each one becomes. This is not easy to practice, especially in a world where everyone is rushing to be heard, to defend themselves, to prove their worth through endless talking. But mastery lies in resisting that urge. Restraint teaches you to treat each word as though it carries weight, as though it has the power to shift the room. The elite don't chase attention by saying more, they earn it by saying less. Every phrase is deliberate, every pause intentional, and the result is that their voices linger long after the conversation has ended. The discipline of restraint is one of the highest forms of communication because it requires mastery of the self. It requires quieting the inner fear that drives over-explaining. It requires trust in your own clarity, and it requires the wisdom to know that silence too speaks. To practice this is to elevate your presence. To embody it is to command respect without ever demanding it. And once you learn to restrain your words, you'll discover a paradox. The less you say, the more you are heard. Even before your first word is spoken, the world has already begun reading you. Every tilt of your head, the way your shoulders rise or fall, the speed of your movements, these subtle signals shape the impression you leave behind. People think communication is mostly verbal, but in truth, the body often speaks louder than the tongue. Confidence isn't only in what you say, it's in how you stand, how you move, how you exist in space. Someone who carries themselves with calm steadiness projects strength without trying. Someone who slouches, fidgets, or shrinks into the background communicates doubt without meaning to. This is why the elite pay close attention not just to their words, but to the silent story their body tells. If you want to be respected, you must first decide inwardly to carry yourself as someone worthy of respect. Shoulders back, spine straight, movements measured. These physical cues don't just convince others, they begin to convince you. When your body reflects strength, your mind starts to follow. And when the two are aligned, your presence becomes undeniable. This is why even silence, when carried with composure, has power. A quiet person who stands tall will often be listened to before a loud one who looks uncertain. Carl Jung observed, "In each of us, there is another whom we do not know." That hidden self often reveals itself through body language. You may speak words of confidence, but if your hands tremble, if your eyes dart away, if your posture collapses, the unspoken self has betrayed the truth. People notice this contradiction, often unconsciously. They sense something isn't aligned, and their trust in you weakens. But when your words and body match, when both say the same thing, the effect is magnetic. You no longer seem like someone performing confidence, but like someone who embodies it. Think of the last time you were drawn to a person in a room without them even speaking. Maybe it was the way they entered, slow, deliberate, not rushed. Maybe it was the way they occupied their chair fully, not folding themselves small as though apologizing for taking up space. That's the unspoken voice at work. True leaders often don't need to assert their authority loudly because their posture, their stillness, their eye contact already set the tone. Presence comes first from the body, then from the mouth. And the remarkable thing is that this can be trained. Seneca once wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few and acting as though there would be no end of them." In communication, many act as though they have unlimited time to make an impression, so they squander it. They fidget, they shuffle, they avert their gaze. But every second others are drawing conclusions. Your body is a constant messenger, and every gesture either strengthens or erodes the impression of authority. Treating these moments as precious forces you to be intentional, to act as though each motion, each look is part of your message. This is why the elite control not just their words but their presence. They don't allow nervous habits to scatter attention. They don't let restlessness betray them. Instead, they use stillness as a form of strength. A steady hand resting calmly on the table often communicates more than restless hands waving endlessly. A few deliberate gestures carry more force than 100 frantic ones. Authority in body language comes not from doing more, but from doing less with greater intention. Just as the discipline of restraint gives power to words, restraint in movement gives power to presence. Be confident in how you carry yourself. Let your body reflect the steadiness you want others to feel in your words. This doesn't mean stiffness. True authority is not rigid, it is relaxed, balanced, and natural. It is not the frozen posture of someone trying too hard, but the composed ease of someone who trusts themselves. That ease invites others to trust you, too. The unspoken voice of body language is always active, whether you're aware of it or not. People are constantly reading it, constantly responding to it, long before you've had the chance to explain yourself. The question then is not whether your body is communicating. It always is. The question is whether it is communicating strength or weakness, certainty or doubt, presence or absence. The elite choose to master this voice instead of leaving it to chance. They know that once your body aligns with your words, you no longer need to force authority. You simply carry it, and everyone else feels it. Your voice is the bridge between your inner world and the outer world. Before people can judge your intentions, before they can measure your ideas, they experience your voice. If it trembles, fades, or drifts into a whisper, they sense hesitation, even if your words are solid. If it rises with unnecessary force, they sense defensiveness, even if you're right. But when your voice carries clarity, firm but not strained, steady but not cold, it signals conviction. It tells others that you believe what you're saying and that you stand behind it. And people trust a voice that sounds like it trusts itself. That trust doesn't happen by accident. It comes from discipline, from practice, from shaping your voice with the same care you'd give to any other instrument. Think of the way a musician learns to master their instrument. They do not start with loud performances. They begin by learning control. A violinist must train their fingers to move with precision. A pianist must spend hours mastering scales before they can move to concert halls. Your voice is no different. If you don't practice control, volume, tone, and pace, it will betray you when it matters most. When your voice wavers or cracks under pressure, it reveals inner disorder. But when it emerges steady and calm even in difficult situations, it shows that you have built an inner cosmos, an